Nobody has done that but him in NBA history. I mean, it's spectacular to see. There's no doubt about it.
That LeBron James is only about LeBron James. For him to want and to wear a patch, nobody else wants to wear it. Nobody else is going to wear it.
When Stephen A. Smith looks genuinely confused, almost stunned, on live television, you know the situation has gone beyond a normal sports debate. This didn't feel like one of those routine hot takes that disappears after a few hours. It felt different the second the conversation started. Because sometimes the smallest controversies end up exposing much bigger tensions underneath the surface, and right now, that's exactly what's happening around LeBron James and this strange jersey patch situation. At first glance, it sounds almost ridiculous that a jersey patch could create this much noise. But the reaction online tells a completely different story. Fans aren't really arguing about fabric stitched onto a uniform, they're arguing about symbolism, respect, branding, and what certain decisions say about LeBron's influence inside the NBA. And once people started noticing the details, the internet immediately turned it into something much larger than it probably was intended to be. That's why Stephen A.'s reaction mattered so much. You could tell he wasn't just reacting to the patch itself, he was reacting to how quickly the entire conversation spiraled into another massive debate about LeBron's power, his image, and the way everything connected to him instantly becomes national discourse. Because with LeBron, nothing ever stays small for long. Even the tiniest controversy somehow turns into a referendum on his legacy, his control over the league, or the way fans perceive him compared to other legends. And honestly, that's what makes this situation fascinating. The patch itself may not matter much in reality, but the reaction absolutely does. Because the second fans believe there's a deeper meaning behind something involving LeBron, social media fills in the blanks instantly. Theories start flying, people pick sides, and suddenly what should have been a minor story becomes another major conversation dominating sports media.
LeBron James is going to be wearing a patch on his jersey that is honoring LeBron James.
Because if we're being honest, jersey patches are already everywhere in the NBA. Every team has corporate sponsors, branding deals, and logos stitched onto uniforms at this point. Fans might not love it, but most people accepted a long time ago that business is now part of modern basketball. Normally, nobody spends more than a few minutes talking about it. But the second LeBron James becomes connected to something like this, the entire reaction changes instantly. Suddenly, the conversation stops being about a simple sponsorship patch. Now people start talking about influence, about power, about control. Fans begin wondering whether the line between basketball and business has completely disappeared when it comes to someone like LeBron. And honestly, that's the real reason this controversy exploded online. Because the truth is, this didn't go viral because people suddenly cared deeply about jersey branding. It blew up because LeBron's name became attached to it. And once that happens, fans immediately start questioning just how much of the NBA world revolves around him, not just his performances on the court, but his ability to shape narratives, control optics, and influence the direction of conversations before they even fully begin. That's what makes LeBron different from almost every other athlete. At this stage of his career, he's no longer viewed as just a basketball player. He's seen as a global brand, a media force, and one of the most powerful figures the league has ever had. So whenever anything unusual happens around him, people automatically assume there's a bigger meaning behind it. Whether that assumption is fair or not almost doesn't matter anymore, because perception drives the entire conversation online. And once fans start believing a player has that level of influence, every small controversy suddenly feels bigger than it actually is.
Nobody else is going to wear it, and the NBA historically has not a single time, outside of death, had a patch on a single guy's uniform honoring just that guy. No sport in the history of our country has ever allowed a single player, while still playing, to wear a patch that honors him and nobody else.
Now this is where Stephen A. Smith's reaction becomes really important, because he wasn't yelling, ranting, or doing his usual over-the-top TV routine. He looked genuinely caught off guard, almost confused. And when someone who has covered the NBA for decades reacts like that, it tells you this conversation hit a different level. Because Stephen A. wasn't really reacting to the patch itself, he was reacting to what the situation represented. To him, this felt like another example of how massive LeBron James' influence has become, not just on basketball, but on the entire media environment surrounding the league. And whether people agree with him or not, the core question he was asking was actually pretty simple. When did the conversation drift this far away from the game itself? At what point did jersey details, branding decisions, sponsorship optics, and off-court narratives start carrying almost as much weight as what players are actually doing on the court? Because that's the part making a lot of older basketball voices uncomfortable. They grew up in an era where the game was the center of everything. Now, sometimes it feels like the surrounding spectacle is becoming just as important as the basketball itself. And LeBron sits right in the middle of that shift. He's arguably the first NBA superstar whose influence became so large that every single detail connected to him, even something as small as a jersey patch, instantly turns into a major media discussion. That's why Stephen A.'s reaction felt less like criticism and more like disbelief. Almost like he was realizing in real time just how much the culture around the NBA has changed.
It is now run by LeBron James apparently said, "Yes, sir, no problem, sir." And in LeBron's next game, he's going to be wearing a patch that says all-time leader made field goals.
This is where things start becoming risky for LeBron James, because once the conversation around a player becomes more about everything surrounding the game instead of the game itself, public perception starts changing in a major way. And honestly, that shift has been slowly building around LeBron for years now. At first, people only focused on the basketball, the championships, the stats, the playoff runs, the legacy debates. But over time, the spotlight expanded far beyond the court. Now every discussion around LeBron seems connected to branding, media influence, business relationships, image control, or league politics in some way. And whether that's fair or not, it changes how fans emotionally connect to him as a player. Because optics matter way more than people want to admit. A jersey is supposed to represent the team, the city, and the identity of the franchise as a whole. Fans want it to feel bigger than any one individual. But when branding decisions start feeling heavily connected to a specific superstar, people begin feeling like the player's personal influence is overshadowing the identity of the organization itself. That's where the tension starts. Not because fans necessarily hate the player, but because they begin wondering where the line between team culture and personal brand actually exists anymore. And with LeBron, someone whose influence stretches across basketball, entertainment, business, and media all at once, those conversations become even louder. The moment fans start viewing a franchise through the lens of one player's power instead of the team itself, every small detail suddenly carries symbolic weight. And that's why this seemingly minor jersey patch controversy turned into such a massive debate online.
Everybody know MJ's my GOAT, but this is the greatest case that LeBron James has made for GOAT status.
Here's the part nobody is really saying out loud. Fans don't just follow individual stars, they build emotional loyalty to teams. And when it starts to feel like the team identity is taking a backseat to one player's presence or influence, that connection slowly starts to weaken. It doesn't happen overnight, but over time it changes how people experience the league as a whole. Now to be fair, LeBron James didn't invent the business side of the NBA. He perfected how to operate inside it. And that's an important distinction. The league has been moving in this direction for years anyway. Global branding, sponsorship integration, media expansion, player-driven narratives, all of that was already coming. LeBron just happened to be the player who understood it better than almost anyone else. But here's where things get complicated. Just because someone masters a system doesn't automatically mean it's always good for the sport. And that's the conversation slowly forming now in basketball circles. There's also a pattern younger players tend to fall into. They see the LeBron blueprint and assume success comes from building a brand first and letting the game follow. But what gets missed in that interpretation is that LeBron built his brand on top of elite, sustained performance at the highest level. The concern now is whether that balance is starting to tilt in a different direction for the next generation. And if you zoom out, this isn't just about LeBron at all. The NBA itself is in a transition phase. You've got players like Nikola Jokic dominating games with almost no interest in controlling media narratives. You've got Giannis Antetokounmpo staying locked in on performance, team success, and keeping things simple off the court. And then you've got younger stars like Anthony Edwards building their identity through raw personality and authenticity rather than heavy image management. That contrast is becoming more and more obvious. On one side, you have players who let their game speak for itself. On the other, you have a model where everything is curated, packaged, and strategically presented to the public. And fans are starting to react to that difference in real time, some lean toward one style, some toward the other. And that's exactly why something like a jersey patch controversy ends up feeling bigger than it should. It stops being about a uniform detail and becomes a symbol of a larger question: what is the NBA turning into, and who is really shaping that direction?